Hey guys, so I am back on a Monday. Surprise, I know. I wish it was under slightly better circumstances because the book that I have to tell you about today, I took a chance on, but as you know, I have been trying to read more fantasy or romantasy. Basically, I've just been trying to get back to my love of magic and magical wonderlands, and this was not the book to do that with, guys. It was not. The problem is that it had such a cool concept, but the execution is just not there. So the book that I'm here to talk about today is Ruinous Creatures by Jessie Cole Jackson. Thank you to Edelweiss and the publisher for my free advanced review copy. This book will be out tomorrow, so if you want to make up your own opinion, which is always your right to do so, you can get it starting tomorrow if you watch this review the day that it's posted. This is a dual POV standalone romantasy. Several of the things that drew me to the story in the first place. It is the story of Adela and Kian. Adela and Kian live in this incredible world where there is this like magical valley. And in this magical valley, this is the one place on this continent in this world in which magical creatures live. So you're talking kelpies, unicorns, dragons, all that type of stuff. And there is a subset of the population, the human population, which is called the keepers. And the keepers keep these animals and these beings, and they take care of them and they help them. But when they die, they become a source of magic through their skulls. Part of their like soul or consciousness kind of stays there. And then there are 3 orders of priesthood that are out in like the larger world outside of the valley. Now there are wards around this valley, so they can't get in. So the keepers are really important along with the matcher. Once-ish a year, members from these 3 orders will show up to get matched with skulls that will provide them magical power that they can then take out of the valley. And they're supposed to do good things within the world. Do they? Power corrupts. The book opens with a matching ceremony with the Order of the Huntress, not too far in the future, and we meet Adela. Adela at the time is the apprentice to the matcher. His name is Bartholomew, and he's an older, cantankerous man. And we find that Adela, though she can hear the skulls, because this is what it means to be a matcher, you have to be able to hear and commune with the skulls. She can hear them, but she's really creeped out by this. She doesn't like it. She doesn't feel like she fits in this role, and that really she was probably just given it because she has an affinity, but also her dad is a very, very important man in the village and in the keeper world. And she's just like, I just don't want to do this. But usually matchers die in this role, right? So she's thinking, I have another 30 years before I have to do this. Well, that night, Adela finds a pair of skulls kind of shoved onto a back top shelf, clearly forgotten about, which is not great in this culture. That's kind of like a blasphemous thing to do. And Bartholomew tells her, leave those alone. And what they are 2 phoenix skulls. Now, phoenixes have not been seen in the valley for generations. She has no idea where these came from, and they're silent. She doesn't hear them. So she is just kind of pulled to them still, not really sure what's going on. She decides to clean them and, take care of them. And then she makes a mistake where she is never supposed to show her face to any of the skulls because she cannot be matched. That would be blasphemous. She ends up showing her face partially to one of the phoenix skulls, and this burst of power goes out through the valley. She has awakened something. That night, animals begin to turn on each other and the humans in the valley, and long story short, Bartholomew ends up dead from his own dragons. They burn him. Yikes. Adela is now the matcher, and she still has this weird pull towards the phoenix skulls, and she's just like, I did this. This is my fault, but she doesn't know what to do now. Parallel to Adela's story is a story of Kian. Kian is a novitiate in the Order of the Huntress, so he's kind of on his way to Adela's village to get matched. But what we find out very quickly is that Kian is a plant, essentially. His parents were murdered by the Order of the Huntress for being smugglers, and Kian joined the order to basically collapse it from within. He wants to destroy the system of magic. He wants to make a more just and better world, because essentially what's happening outside of the valley is that people who have the skulls are hoarding power, and they're like, you know, charging tons for it, and it's something that then is only accessible by the rich. It's like a whole thing, right? And so Kian, his plan is to find his way into the valley and then to burn all of the skulls that are there, thinking that this will just like decimate their entire power base if all the skulls are gone. Kian shows up in the valley and sees Adela from across the room, and he's like, that is the most beautiful woman I've ever seen in my entire life. There's a party that night. They end up banging. And then the next day, when the matching ceremony actually begins, Kian ends up matching with one of the phoenix skulls, and by a series of accidents, Adela matches with the other one. And so they have unleashed a brand new magic essentially into the valley, and all of these power players are basically going to come for them and try to use them, although they don't really know what their power is, because again, this has never happened before. I really liked the opening to this book. It was potentially going to be very difficult to follow the power of the skull and the valley and the orders and this and that. And I thought that the book did a really great job in the beginning of kind of laying out the groundwork for this society. You know, you learn that there are different types of animals, have different types of magic, and then they fall under one of the 3 orders, and, you know, that type of stuff. And I really enjoyed getting to know Adela in the beginning, and obviously Kian has a really interesting backstory, and you know, this whole thing with the phoenixes and like no one really knows what's going on. That whole entry point into this was really interesting, especially with Adela as she struggles with her very like destructive power that is unleashed when she begins to wear the skull. The problem is that the characterization and the pacing of the plot starts to fall apart real quick. Now, you will know from my other reviews, I'm not a huge fan of things like novellas, for example. I'm always just like, oh, give me a full novel so that I can really fully get immersed in this world and these characters and that type of stuff. Which again, I felt like this book did really well in the beginning. So I was like, oh, this may end up really working for me as a standalone, and I have really enjoyed full standalone novels. But as the plot just kind of starts to just like, it starts to snowball essentially, and we go from something that has like this deeply emotional plot, this very well described magic system, this interesting world and political system, to something that just begins to be tell, and characters start doing things that are basically just like yada-yada-ing away problems or becoming someone else when needed for the plot. And one basic example of this is Adela and Kian. You know, they have a lust at first sight thing. They're banging within like 24 hours of first meeting. I think that that is escalated because once they are wearing the skulls, they have like a connection because the phoenixes that they're wearing were a mated pair. Then there's also a suggestion that in order to unlock their magic, they need to be having sex with each other, which is a plot point that's just never picked up again and is made a big deal of, and then it never actually matters. And so then you just start feeling, okay, they're being pushed together by the skulls. And I mean, pretty quickly in this book, they are exchanging those 3 little words. And I'm like, whoa. On what grounds? Another thing, we know that Kian is, you know, working to undermine the order. Adela has spent her entire life kind of working for the orders, or not, but not necessarily like, you know, with them, just kind of like in tandem with them. And so it's built up that Kian finally revealing who he is and the fact that he's gonna have like burned down the matching hut. And there's like some other stuff that I'm not gonna spoil, obviously. Again, just not a problem. Like Adela is just kind of like lolling her way through the rest of the plot, just like, this is fine, we'll figure it out, I'll do this. And for the Adela who we meet in the beginning, who's very conflicted, who's very confused, like I understand what they were trying to go for with this characterization, or the author, I don't know where they came from. I understand what the author was trying to do with this new characterization, showing Adela as someone who just really lacks self-confidence in the beginning and is kind of growing into it as with her powers and like understanding more about herself, but it just kind of becomes something where she's like thinking a lot in the beginning about all of her actions, and then in the end she's just like, this is the way, and just charging forward, and it just again feels very out of character. Like I said, things like Kian's backstory are set up to be a big deal and then just aren't. And then the whole third act, the actual like climax / actual big bad of this book, which is a reveal in the like last third of the book, so obviously I'm not going to spoil anything, but it just unravels so quickly, and it's just like, and then this happened, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened, and I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. Why is this happening? What is happening right now? Like, can we sit in this a little bit more? Can I get a little bit more explanation? Like, why is this character suddenly like guys, this very easily could have been at least 2 books, because like I said, there's a really interesting, well-written opening that just kind of like collapses in on itself as more and more things need to happen, and certain plot points get dropped or they get ignored, or like I said, they're just yada yada out of existence, and you're just like, what is happening? And there is a really interesting ending to this book where some major things are happening. And again, I'm trying not to spoil this, but then it's just done. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. What? What? You can't just like turn the world upside down and then just be like, and what? In the end, I think my general feeling with this book is unsatisfied and disappointed, because again, I really, really liked the opening of this. It felt really strong and fresh and interesting and different. And then it just kind of, like I said, just kind of fell on its face towards the end. And I don't know if that's an issue with the fact that this was trying to be a standalone or what, but like I said, this book comes out tomorrow, so you can make up your own mind by checking this out from your local library or getting it from your local bookstore, however it is that you get your books. But if this is a book on your list and you're like, do I read this or the other thing? I would go with the other thing, because overall, it's almost worse that it started well, because I would have just preferred to have been like, this is fine the whole way through, rather than having my expectations raised and then being extra disappointed by the way that it fell apart in the end. So I think I end up giving this like 3.25 stars, because I liked the world building, I liked a lot of the characters, I liked the ideas, but I just can't rate it any higher than that, and that might even be generous because it just wasn't a satisfying reading experience. This is 2 not great ones in a row for me, unfortunately, so I'm really hoping that my next book is better than this. We will be filming a roundtable that is books we think will be 5 stars, so here's hoping I cannot be disappointed a 3rd time in a row. Check back in for that video, guys, and I'll be back hopefully with another ARC review next week. Thanks, guys. Bye.